dearly beloved Lord, we are so grateful that we're able to gather this way together and read from your saints and enjoy what they have to say and enjoy one another's company. It is a great blessing. We offer our gratitude. We offer our love. We offer our companionship to you and to one another. Om Amen. I wonder if those two ladies that are down in Florida are going to join us this evening. So far, it's just the three of us.
I don't know.
I heard from them, and they were there yesterday for the Sunday talk.
Oh, okay.
But they may be out to dinner. Who knows?
Okay.
I know they're having a wonderful time. That's what both Elizabeth and June told me yesterday.
Okay. Well, good. I knew they would. It's good to hear that feedback, though. Yeah.
Right. I'm so glad for June that she has a companion that takes care of her so well as Elizabeth does.
Yeah.
There's a couple of more people. How good.
Namaste.
Namaste, namaste. And that looks like it must be, is that Liam? Yeah, I believe it is.
It's Liam. Hey, Brother Shankara. Hey.
Hey,
I'm
good to see you, everyone. Okay. Heidi, would you like to read this poem for we read it last week?
Yeah, but you read it last week and said we ran out of time, and you said it was one of your favorites, so you wanted to,
start with it again tonight.
Start with it and go for it. Okay. Okay. God would kneel down. Page 41. I think God might be a little prejudiced. For once he asked me to join him on a walk through this world, and we gazed into every heart on this earth. And I noticed he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping, and before any eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God too would kneel down. I have come to learn. God adores his creation.
So if you'd be so kind as to read it again. And you read very well, Heidi. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. God would kneel down. I think God might be a little prejudiced. For once he asked me to join him on a walk through this world. And we gazed into every heart on this earth. And I noticed he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping, and before any eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God too would kneel down. I have come to learn God adores his creation. I see why you like that one so much.
Yeah. I just love the way it opens. I think God might be a little prejudiced. Yeah. St. Francis of Assisi had such a sly sense of humor. Like that poem when he wrote about people asking him about the news.
Oh,
they of course meant all the news of Rome. That wasn't what was important to him. Hello, Robert.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you this evening. So we just read the poem God Would Kneel Down, and we're about to start discussing it. Anyone else have anything to say about this lovely poem? Well, you know, one of the things that strikes me about all of these saints is that we can believe what they say. You know, they're not going to blow smoke at us. They're not going to exaggerate or puff things up. So when St. Francis of Assisi says that the Lord asked me to join him on a walk through this world, and we gazed into every heart on this earth, that's that expression of omnipresence. Hmm. How long would it take to gaze into every heart on this earth otherwise? But it doesn't take any time if you're omnipresent. And so, and then God noticed what he noticed and reacted as he reacted. So sweet. And of course, it finishes with the I have come to learn God adores his creation. He says that in some other places too. Anybody else got anything to say about this one?
I like the expression. I noticed he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping.
Yeah.
Because I always think God walks with us all the time, but when we are in difficulties, he carries us. That's how I always believed in. And it was true every time. You know, when I'm in difficulties, he always seems to carry us. So
there's that wonderful old story.
Yes.
Of the footprints on the beach.
Footprints, exactly. Yes.
And
I love that footprints. Sure.
Yeah, and at one point there's only one set of footprints, and the right. devotee says, "I thought you said you'd always be with me," and the Lord says, "Yes, that place where there's only one set of footprints, that's when I was carrying."
Yes, that's true. Exactly. Thank you.
There's a third part to that too.
Please.
The devotee says, after he's told about the single footstep prints, he says, well, what was that where there's one set of footprints in that little trench? And Jesus says, that's when I was dragging you.
I hadn't heard that part.
That's me getting dragged. No.
Right.
Cindy, could you repeat? I couldn't hear clearly. What was it that where he carried? What happened to the print there?
You don't know? You want to do the whole thing real quick?
Yeah, you were a little muffled, so I couldn't hear.
Am I still muffled?
Now you're okay.
Okay. That the way I heard it is called footprints in the sand, and it's like, you know, there are two sets of footprints, and that's when Jesus, that's when you were, you know, that Jesus says to his devotee, that's when I was, you know, I'm always with you, you know, I'm walking with you. Well, what about this time when there's just the one set of footprints? I thought you'd always be with me, and Jesus said, that's when I carried you. And the third part, which isn't official, is then what is just the one set of footprints in that little trench, that little narrow, oh, that's when I dragged you. That Jesus says to the devotee, that's when I dragged you.
Yeah. Silly. Sometimes we need to be dragged.
Silly but true.
So anybody else, anything before we move on to the next one? Well, apparently we've said and thought what we need to say about that one. Okay. Haima, would you like to read anyone who suffered?
Sure, Brother
I,
Shankar.
I remind you, please, to read slowly.
Okay, I
And,
will. Anyone who suffered, I would not leave this earth until God promised me that my hands could always touch the face of anyone who suffered. Anyone who suffered. I would not leave this earth until God promised me that my hands could always touch the face of anyone who suffered. Very nice poem, Brother Shankara.
yes.
Extremely nice follow.
I don't know if all of us know the Catholic tradition at all, but from within the Catholic tradition, this is a definition of a saint. That's why the Catholics pray to the saints, because the saints are always accessible, always, they can always reach their hand out and touch the face of anyone who suffers. You know, there's the miracles, that's one thing. But it is this relationship. And that's why they have in Catholic cathedrals, if you go in Catholic cathedrals, you'll find that there are grottos, little areas, little special places for various saints. And they have special places where you can kneel down and pray and so on. It's very touching because there's a very powerful belief in it. And so when St. Francis says, I would not leave this earth until God promised me that my hands could always touch the face of anyone who suffered. This is his promise to the Catholic flock. And of course, all of the saints have their particular specialties, so to speak.
And the first thing I thought of when I read this poem was that what a wonderful relationship he had with God. And I mean, I don't mean to downplay that because they were saints after all, but
No, that is the first definition of the
It's-
saint, Heidi. You hit on it perfectly.
it's
The
just,
first
I don't know,
definition of the saint is that they have this relationship with God that actually is non-dual. That is to say, they have in some sense become one with God. And so, you know, it's as St. John of the Cross says, the world and the universe both exist and do not exist. So that's what's reflected in this relationship that you're talking about. There's this, without relationship, there's a recent Catholic saint, Padre Pio. If you study his life, you find that he had to overcome great obstacles to become one with the Christ. And when he did, he manifested the stigmata, the holes, bleeding holes in his hands and feet, and also the cut on his side.
and what was his name? Padre?
Padre Pio, P-I-O, Padre Pio. You can look him up online. It's an amazing, there are films about him. He's a remarkable and very recent saint.
And then the other thing too, he says, that my hands could always touch the face of anyone who suffered. And knowing how St. Francis was such a lover of animals and nature and all that, I think he's not just talking about people.
Yeah, boy, howdy, Heidi, you're right on the money. Exactly. Oh, exactly. That's reflected in the saying of a Vedantic saint, Swami Vivekananda. Where shall we go to find God, if not in our own hearts and in every living being, not just human beings, but in every living being? So I'm sure you're right about St. Francis here.
Did you know that St. Francis was the first of the saints to receive, as they say, receive the stigmata?
No, I
Yep,
did not.
yep, 'tis true.
Wow.
And also, I don't know that they pray to saints, but other denominations, Protestant denominations, do recognize and celebrate certain of the saints, especially Francis. Some of the major ones, like the Anglican Church, Episcopal Church, some Lutherans.
Hmm. Indeed.
I have a very old book in my bookcase that was my dad's from when he was pretty young about Padre Pio. He
Mhm.
was absolutely fascinated with that. It's an interesting, very interesting story about
It
him.
is an interesting story. And he had to overcome great obstacles to realize his union with and relationship with the divine. Anything else about this poem, anyone who suffered?
It made me think right away on this reading of it, which I hadn't before, of Kuan Yin.
Yes.
Because, I mean, she was a bodhisattva, which their vow is basically to not achieve liberation until all beings had achieved it. But she, in particular, I mean, her name is supposed to mean she who hears the cries of the world. And just this embodiment of that sort of compassion, that
Yes.
motherly compassion.
I hadn't thought about that first line in that sense, Cindy, but you're right. That is the bodhisattva vow.
Yeah.
I won't leave this world. I won't disappear from the realm of human beings. And you're right, that is very like Kuan Yin. And for that matter, like the Dalai Lama these days. He's sticking around so that he can manifest the highest forms of compassion and love. Anything else about that other poem? Anyone who suffered? Okay, Liam, would you like to read the next one, In His Sanity?
Yes. Okay. In his sanity, if all the tenderness in this world could reflect from my eyes, would you accept that love? If all for the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? In his sublime sanity, every moment God offers that to us. Anything that might comfort. In his sanity, if all the tenderness in this world could reflect from my eyes, would you accept that love? If all the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? In his sublime sanity, every moment God offers that to us. Anything that might comfort.
Anything from anyone? Well, I'll speak up then.
Um,
If all the tenderness in this world could reflect from my eyes, would you accept that love? If all the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? I just think it's very interesting that this poem starts with those questions. It's always there, he says, in the last part of the poem. Are you accepting it? Are you willing to accept? Or are you still in that space where you feel like, oh, I'm not deserving, or it isn't real? And the word sanity, in his sanity. In his
What
sublime sanity, every moment God offers that to us. Anything that might comfort.
what I find striking is that the word of the use, would you accept, like it's just when I read it, from just like we're reading this poem, it seems kind of like an absurd question, like why wouldn't I want to accept all the tenderness in the world and the divine pardon? And yet, there are times when I'm in the midst of life where where I don't accept it, right? Because you're either being self-critical or critical of others, and it's just kind of like, but when I kind of see it and observe it from here, it kind of seems like one of those questions that, like, why does it even need to be asked? And yet, if I really look at my behavior, there are times, throughout the day that I'm not accepting.
Amen. And I think that's why he has to ask the question. And I love your use of the term mists of the world, in the mists of the world. In this divine fog of ignorance that is our birthright, our birth portion, I should say. We're born to ignorance. And we're slowly working our way out of it to where we are willing not only to accept, but be part of that anything that might comfort.
I really love that he uses that word comfort.
Yes.
St. Francis is kind of comfortable saint, and a comfortable being, and just kind of warm and fuzzy in a lot of ways. But comfort is not something, especially way back when he was alive. Comfort wasn't a word that you often heard when people were talking about God or having a relate or whatever your place was in the world in relation to God. It wasn't about comfort, because comfort, it's you're comforted only when before the comfort you've been experiencing distress.
Mhm.
And the fact that accepting comfort in any way that it may be offered, that is God saying, here, here's this door to accepting all of this love and compassion and forgiveness. This is the door. Come into this space with me, this little comfort space.
Yes.
And now you can relax and we can be together. I may be reading too much into
No,
it,
no, I think you're
but
right on. I think that's the invitation. That's why it starts with those two questions. I think you're very right.
yeah, it's not about God fearing.
No.
It, it's interesting, Cindy, that you really honed in on the word comfort and St. Francis, because in a lot of 12-step fellowships, I think particularly Alcoholics Anonymous, they have this prayer called they call it the St. Francis prayer. I don't know what the official name of it is, but they call it like the 11-step or St. Francis prayer. And I'm not going to go through the whole prayer, but it's basically, where there's darkness, may I bring light. May I seek to comfort instead of be comforted. And and there are other kind of clauses like that, but one of the ones that always resonated with me strongly was that seek to comfort rather than be comforted. So I thought it was just it was interesting that you really honed in on that. And yeah, I agree. It seems like Saint Francis is a very comforting saint.
Yeah, he wants to be able to put his hands on our face whenever we suffer. That poem that you just mentioned is one of Heima's favorites, I happen to know. Heima often quotes from
Yes.
that prayer. Yes, it's hard for us, as Cindy pointed out. It's still hard for us to get our head around a God that is not judging and something we need to be afraid of. Those are just mutually exclusive, and that's what St. Francis is saying. There's no fear here. There's only comfort. Divine pardon. Yes, we make missteps. We make mistakes. But if all the forgiveness that the heavens have ever known, if all the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? Only if we have the faith. And faith and fear cannot be together.
I just posted in the chat the St. Francis prayer, and it says in the one I posted is console rather than comfort, but I remember comfort too. I think maybe different people, there are different interpretations of it, because console and comfort can be somewhat the same, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
I've heard.
it's translating out of the Latin into two different English synonyms. Yeah. What were you saying,
Yeah.
Liam? I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I was gonna say I've seen it with different, translations here and there, but I mean the essence is always like the same. But yeah, sometimes depending, I guess, on who translated it, certain words might be slightly different, like Cindy just pointed out.
And the one that Ladinsky would choose. I mean, this book is now very well known here. The word that Ladinsky would choose is always the one that is straight across, nothing down, nothing downward. Console, there's a little bit of downwardness. I will console you. I will console you. Let's share this comfort. That's where Ladinsky always uses the word that is a level playing field, a level, not looking down, not being better than, and therefore I will do something for
Comfort seems more loving,
you. Yes,
and loving is always, straight across, equal.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, comfort makes me think more of like compassion, and console makes me think more of like sympathy, like
Hmm.
so yeah, it's
That's one of the things that, as this book became known, I noticed about Ladinsky, is that it's always about straight across. It's always, as Cindy said, there's no levels in love. It's just straight across. And
I think,
anything else?
go ahead, Brother. Brother Shankar, I was going to say that we need St. Francis's poem right now more than ever before in our life. Where there is hatred, let me so love. That one thing every day I think about it is it's such a powerful poem of his.
Yes.
Make me an instrument of thy peace, and especially in today's world right now, we could all use that. Where there is hatred, let me so love. Constant reminder.
Yes. Yes, we're in a world that is in the midst of transformation. And a lot of people in their distress are becoming
Exactly.
something other than loving. It's very understandable. Who would like to read a wedding gift?
I'll read it. Oh, was somebody else going to?
Did somebody else say they'd read it?
No, I think they backed off when I stepped up. That's okay. I'll read it.
Please.
Okay, let's pull it up here. A wedding gift. I hear you singing, dear, inviting me to your limb. I am coming, for all that we do is a preparation for love. I hear you singing, my Lord, inviting me to your throne. We are coming, dear, for all the toil you have blessed us with is a preparation to know and hold the sacred. I hear you singing, my soul, but how can it be that God's voice has now become my own? That is just a wedding gift for our divine union, my beloved said. a wedding gift. I hear you singing, dear, inviting me to your limb. I am coming, for all that we do is a preparation for love. I hear you singing, my Lord, inviting me to your throne. We are coming, dear, for all the toil you have blessed us with is a preparation to know and hold the sacred. I hear you singing, my soul, but how can it be that God's voice has now become my own? That is just a wedding gift for our divine union, my beloved said. Well, the first thing that this makes me think of is one of those statements in the back of Realizing God, Swami Prabhavananda's, your Ishta Devata is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. As far as the how can it be that God's voice has become my own?
Well, the word that strikes me in this, it's used twice, is preparation. It's a preparation for love, and it's a preparation to know and hold the sacred. All we do, and then he further defines that as all the toil you have blessed us with. Preparation, preparation. So if we can look on it that way, rather than looking on it as a burden, we can look at it as a preparation for the wedding of our soul with the divine, so that the voices become one. That makes life, that gives a different cast to life.
That makes me think of our conversation on Sunday about yoga and joining with God, and this idea that this poem brings up of your voice becoming indistinguishable from God's when you get to a point of meditation where it's like a dialogue between you and Mother.
Mm,
And
very
it's
nice.
and you know, going and one more thought I had when I was reading the poem that Cindy sent in the chat, I was thinking, you know, of the St. Francis poem. I just kept going back to speaking of the times of Gandhi's spiritual message to the world, and the language is so strikingly similar. He says, "This informing power of spirit is God, and since nothing else that I see merely through the senses can or will prevail, he alone is. I see it as purely benevolent, for I can see that in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence I gather that God is love. He is truth. He is light. He is life.
Beautiful. A beautiful poem from Gandhi.
It was his spiritual message to the world. And one of the only places where he really spoke in English in 1931, he recorded it in London. And it is one of my just favorite prayers.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Divya. Beautiful. So, yeah. Well, this truth, every saintly being is going to reflect this truth, aren't they? In one way or another. That's one of the things that we find as we go through this Love Poems from God book. We find essentially the same truth, spoken in so many different and beautiful ways. And so here we find Gandhi saying the same thing, which shouldn't be any surprise since his constant companion was the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, and he did not allow his mind to insist on anything but truth. I mean, his cardinal principle was satyagraha, insistence on truth. And you can certainly see him sitting around with these other saintly personalities, can't you? You can see him sitting around having a conversation with them.
And just looking at this, like it says, I hear you singing, dear, and then the next stanza, I hear you singing, my Lord, I hear you singing, my soul. And so I'm thinking that's maybe just like the transformation, you know,
Yes.
of getting closer, to the divine. That's how he shows it.
Beautifully thought and read, Heidi, exactly. He said the first is very dualistic, inviting me to your limb, like a bird singing, which was a reality. I mean, St. Francis heard the divine voice in birdsong. So inviting me to your limb. And then
inviting me to your throne.
right. And then, as you say, the union. Well done, Heidi. That was good.
I just want to say, I don't know why, but something about the second stanza, in particular, the we are coming, dear, for all the toil you have blessed us with, is a preparation to know and hold the sacred.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, like when I read that, like I just had it just like kind of reminds me of like the story of, like the fall of like Adam and Eve, and then into like the story of Cain and Abel. And like I just kind of think of the, like, because when I think of Cain and Abel, I think of like, the toiling of the earth. And I don't know, I really want to go there. I just kind of just felt that though, like really like that particular stanza just really made me think of that story, and I'm kind of still processing, I guess, but I just wanted to share that. For some
Well,
reason it made
that's
me
good. All of these sacred stories in the Torah, all of these, the rabbis, particularly the mystical rabbis, will tell you, it's all metaphorical, and it is all meant to portray the sacred in its highest form, but in language that is unexceptionable. So it's, yes, thank you, Liam, that's good.
Now that I've actually, and when you shared that, it made me think of, I thought of it more. And yeah, like, I guess what I want to say is that, a lot of times the fall, right? It seems like, kind of a lot of people view it as like, oh, it was a bad event. But, when I view it through this, it seems like that was just kind of part of the preparation and process to know and hold the sacred.
Exactly, exactly. We, the fall was the embrace of duality, so that we could have this sense of separation and longing to return to the divine union. Otherwise, there's no experience. If you read the story of the garden before, you can say not much happens. The beings exist, are one with the divine. There's this separation, but it isn't a real separation. They don't feel any sense of separation. Anyway, without getting off on an exegesis of of the Adam and Eve story, but I think that you really hit on a very good point, Liam, about the preparation. This prepares us for, and I think that the fact that that the word toil came, which is of course used in the Torah. Now you will toil for your livelihood. Anybody else? This is good stuff. This is why we do this. I hear you singing, my soul, but how can it be that God's voice has now become my own? That is just a wedding gift for our divine union, my beloved said. Rejoin. This next one is one of the longer of St. Francis's poems. I think it's the longest one in the section on St. Francis. Heidi, would you like to read it?
Sure. Our need for thee. In our ever-present need for thee, beloved, let us know.
Heidi,
Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You need to be a little closer to the microphone.
Okay.
We're getting a little feedback, a little loop.
Okay.
If you could start again.
Sure. I got a kitty that hopped up on my lap, so
Ah,
I gotta squeeze into him. Okay. Our need for thee. In our ever-present need for thee, beloved, let us know your peace. Let us be your instruments that break every shackle, for do not a cage one's weak. And give us our inheritance of divine love so that we can forgive like you. And let us be wise so that we do not weed another's madness.
Wed, so that we do not wed.
So that we do not wed another's madness and then make them in debt to us for the deep gash their helpless, raging lance will cause. Darkness is an unlit wick. It just needs your touch, beloved, to become a sacred flame. And what sadness in this world could endure if it looked into your eyes? God is like a honeybee. He doesn't mind me calling him that. For when we are kind, sweet, he nears and can draw you into himself. What is there to understand of each other? If a wand turned the sun into a moon, would not the moon mourn the ecstatic effulgence
Effulgence.
it once was? We are all in mourning for the experience of our essence we knew and now miss. Light is the cure. All else is a placebo. Yes, I will console any creature before me that is not laughing or full of passion for their art or life. For laughing and passion, beauty and joy is our heart's truth. All else is labor and foreign to the soul. I have stood in his reign and now fill granaries as do the fertile plains. Giving is as natural to love as sound from the mouth. There is a courageous dying. It's called
Effacement.
effacement. I can't get that one out. Sorry. There is a courageous dying. It is called effacement. That holy death unfurls our spirit wings and allows us to embrace God even as we stand on the earth. Our need for thee. In our ever-present need for thee, beloved, let us know your peace. Let us be your instruments that break every shackle, for do not the caged ones weep. And give us our inheritance of divine love so that we can forgive like you. And let us be wise so that we do not wed another's madness and then make them in debt to us for the deep gash their helpless raging lamp will cause. Darkness is an unlit wick. It just needs your touch, beloved, to become a sacred flame. And what sadness in this world could endure if it looked into your eyes? God is like a honeybee. He doesn't mind me calling him that. For when you are kind, sweet, he nears and can draw you into himself. What is there to understand of each other? If a wand turned the sun into a moon, if a wand turned the sun into a moon, would not the moon mourn the ecstatic
Effulgence.
effulgence it once was? We are all mourning for the experience of our essence we knew and now miss. Light is the cure. All else is a placebo. Yes, I will console my any creature before me that is not laughing or full of passion for their art or life. For laughing and passion, beauty and joy is our heart's truth. All else is labor and foreign to the soul. I have stood in his reign and now fill granaries as do the fertile plain. Giving is as natural to love as sound from the mouth. There is a courageous dying. It is called effacement.
Effacement.
Effacement. That holy death unfurls our spirit's wings and allows us to embrace God even as we stand on the earth.
This is in ecclesiastical terms. This is a homily. This is a complete summation of the title, Our Need for Thee. Does anyone have any reaction to it? Anything at all you'd like to say? There's so much here.
Well, I'll just jump in and say this is one of my absolute favorites. I just love this. And I pull that second to the last paragraph out just all by itself and quote it to folks. I will console any creature before me that is not laughing or full of passion for their art or life. For laughing and passion, beauty and joy is our heart's truth. All else is labor and foreign to the soul.
Yes.
I just love that.
Oh, I do too.
And the first part, oh gosh. Let us be your instruments that break every shackle, for do not the caged ones weep. Reminds me of that Hafiz poem that's in this book about dropping keys for the rowdy prisoners.
Right, right.
Yeah, I just love it. So much in it. Each stanza is just kind of a wonder.
Mm-hmm.
God is like a honeybee. That reminds me of Sri Ramakrishna
Mm-hmm.
very much. He doesn't mind me calling him that.
No. Thank you for going to the trouble to read that long poem twice, Heidi. I know it's taxing to read aloud to others, and you did a lovely job. Thank you.
Oh, you're sweet. I kind of botched it, but I got through it.
Well, you did well. Anybody else have anything to say about this?
Second stanza, Brother Shankara, it reminds of the world that is around us. We could really use that. Give us our inheritance of divine love so that we can forgive like you. It's very powerful.
Yes, and the sentence that follows it, you
Yeah.
know, and give us our divine inheritance, give us our inheritance of divine love so that we can forgive like you.
And let
And
us,
let us be wise so that we do not wed another's madness and make them in debt to us for the deep gash their helpless raging lance will cause. And if that is not an instruction for right now
yes,
in this world,
we need that. We need to inherit that divine love right now.
there,
Lot more of it.
there is so much anxiety,
Yes,
so much feeling of anguish and grief and just plain what in the hell is happening here. And so when people are in that mood, it's easy for them to manifest a kind of madness. And so he says, let us be wise
yes,
and not wed that madness, so that when they strike out at us in their anguish and desperation, that we don't make them in debt to us for what they do.
And we do that, not just in the sorts of situations we're in now, but we do that with people in our relationships, our personal relationships,
it's true.
and talk about, some serious self-help advice, wedding another's madness and making them, oh God, when the first time I read that, it really made me think of a particular relationship with a family member I have, and that I was doing that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. It takes two to have a crazy argument.
Well, that's why he says, "Let us be wise and not wed,
Yeah,
not get into
yeah.
that duality argument. That
Mhm.
remind ourselves that behind this is the unity. Behind us is the love and compassion."
Yeah.
Unlit wick. It just needs your touch, beloved, to become a sacred flame.
Yes.
Yeah, that line makes me think of the poem that Cindy posted in the chat with the line of where there's darkness, may I bring light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's 9 o'clock. Maybe we should read this one first again next week
Next week. Yes.
and discuss it more.
Sounds like a plan.
And what is your cat's name, Heidi?
Little guy.
Little guy. I love it.
LG for short, and he's an 18-pound boy, so he's not really, there's nothing little about him.
Yes, yes.
He fidgeted, he got off, so I was
we,
trying
we
to comfort him and read, and it just wasn't working.
years ago there was a cat that lived with us. When uh, our son was just a little boy, he named the cat, and the initials were ST, but that stood for Super Tiger,
Oh,
and
tiger.
and he was a big cat also, big cat, Super Tiger, an orange tabby.
Okay. Yeah, he's a tuxedo cat, black,
Ooh,
the white. Yeah,
yeah,
he's a pretty boy.
a big one, huh?
He's a big boy.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, everyone,
Thank you.
so good to gather with you this way.
Tomorrow is a big day.
We'll just leave it with this. Lord, let us embody, let us become what St. Francis sings to us of. Let us know the truth in our hearts of which he speaks. Let us live that truth, as Gandhi said. Let us know your divine peace. May we have joy, may we have bliss, may we have peace of mind. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. And we have this habit of putting you in the Divine Mother's hands. May you go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. Durga is a name of the Divine Mother. She's responsible for our passage through this life. A great good night to you, as my great granddaddy would have said. A great good night to you. May you have a restful and sweet sleep, if it please your great and wonderful soul.
I
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
Prabhu.
night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone. Thank you, Brother
Good
Shankar. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.